We are indeed honored to have with us U.S. Air Force 4-star General Larry O. Spencer. General Spencer is the 37th Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force and President of the United States Air Force Association. It was said when he was appointed the Vice Chief of Staff that he was an unusual appointment. And I think that you might be able to relate with that statement. In fact, as I just heard it on Monday of this week when I met a former colleague of General Spencer's. But I am truly proud as an Air Force veteran to welcome to the podium General Larry Spencer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Congratulations to you all. First order of business, how about those gnats? All right. Anyone here from Houston? Good. Oh, yeah. Once somebody started to raise a hand, but they were afraid to. All right, and I'm born and raised in D.C., so I have to confess that I'm a Washington Redskins fan. I confess that. I only confess that because if there's any Dallas Cowboy fans in here, we have some folks that will escort you out here in a second. Okay, again, congratulations to you all. I think any of us that are involved in this program would trade places with you in a heartbeat. And I have to tell you, one of the things that happens to you when you make 4 stars is they give you a speechwriter. And I had a speechwriter. Didn't know that much about what he did, but I got rid of him because I don't really like to give speeches. I just like to talk to people from my heart, which is what I'm going to do today. Not very long because I really want to hear what's on your mind and what kind of questions you might have. So any of you born and raised or grew up in the country on a farm? Not many. Again, I grew up in D.C., but I spent my summers on a farm with my grandfather down in a place called Red House, Virginia. And I would go down there in the summers. My cousin was there. We would have a great time on the farm. One summer I went down, and unfortunately my cousin wasn't there, so it was just me and my grandfather. We were both introverts, really never talked that much, but this summer he decided, because it was just the two of us, he would teach me a few things. As an example, he taught me the difference between a donkey and a mule. I don't know why he felt like I needed to know that, but he taught me that. He asked me a question once, which I never answered, and he never gave me the answer. He asked me, how does a crow know to crow at 5:30 in the morning? I told him I didn't know, and he didn't answer. He didn't tell me why, so I still don't know. But our routine was to get up in the morning, 5:30 or so, eat breakfast, get on the tractor, go out to one of the several tobacco fields that he had, and work tobacco, which is what we did, which I didn't like, being a guy from the city, but that's what I did. One morning, though, we got up, and rather than get on the tractor, he hitched up the horse. We followed the horse on a platform out to one of his fields, and he hitched up a plow to this horse and started plowing rows in the field. And I don't know how many of you have ever seen that. It's a kind of a fascinating thing to watch. So I'm sitting in the dirt watching my grandfather plow these perfect rows. And at some point in that process, he needed to go relieve himself, and so he went off in the woods. So I'm thinking, okay, this is the first time my grandfather and I have really had a good conversation. He's trying to teach me some things, trying to help me grow up. So I said, okay, I'm going to impress him. While he's in the woods, I'm going to get behind this horse, and I'm going to continue plowing the rows so he can see that I've got initiative, that I'm growing up, and that because he generally thought of me as a city kid, kind of lazy. I wanted to prove to him that I had what it took. First of all, a farm horse is a big horse. And I got in behind this horse, and it's got a plow, which is really heavy. And if you're not familiar with this process, there's a thing called a single tree, essentially a chain that hooks up to a platform that pulls the plow. You position yourself behind the plow with the rein behind you so you can control the horse. So, and again, I'm 12 years old, so I get in, I can barely lift this plow. So I get it up upright, and I know how to make the horse go forward. And I don't know why they thought of this term. It was called come up. So when they said come up, the horse would go. So I said, all right, come up. And the horse started to move. The problem is I didn't know anything about plowing, and there is an art to keeping the plow straight. You can lean it one way or the other to curve. I didn't know that. And so this horse starts walking directly diagonal across my grandfather's perfectly plowed rows. And I'm running for dear life trying to hold on, not knowing, and I couldn't stop because the horse was moving. And about halfway through that, the thought occurred to me that I know how to make the horse go, but I don't know how to make the horse stop, because I never had to tell the horse to stop. So we're going through these rows, and I got to be honest with you. Now, times are different now. There was not much political correctness back then, and we were out on the farm. There was nobody out there, no witnesses out there. And please forgive me, I'm just going to be blunt with you. You could whip your kids back then, and nobody would care, nobody would know it, and frankly, most people would encourage it. So that's what I'm thinking about. And the tool of choice back then was called a switch, which is essentially a branch from a tree. If I recall, dogwood was the tree of choice that they used back then, dogwood tree. So I'm thinking, okay, my grandfather's never whipped me before, but this is it. And I'm going across that row, and I'm scared, and I'm nervous, trying not to get hurt. My grandfather comes out of the woods. He yells out, "Larry, what are you doing?" And simultaneously, just by instinct, I sort of turned, and I stumbled. And trying to catch myself, I said, "Whoa!" And of course, the horse stopped. So I figured out how to make the horse stop, but it was too late. So now my grandfather's charging across the field. I'm looking around at the dogwood trees, thinking, okay, this is it. My grandfather's never given me a whipping before, but this is it. And so he came up to me, and the first thing he said was, which surprised me, he said, "Are you okay?" I didn't expect him to say that. I said, "Yes, sir, I'm fine." I started to say, "I'm sorry." And he said, "It's okay to try and fail, but it's not okay not to try." Now, that was inartfully said. It wasn't something that a scholar would write down in a book. But that is something that stood with me my entire life. And the reason I'm telling you this is because you all are going to go to a lot of leadership training in your careers, and rightfully so. You're going to study and read about, Sun Tzu and Clausewitz and all of those great war fighters and great leaders, and rightfully so. But the point I'm making to you is the most important lessons I learned that I use in my career were lessons I learned at home and on that farm and even in D.C. That lesson to me essentially says, you think life is going to happen, you're going to fall down, but you have to keep getting up, and you have to keep trying, and don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. It was mentioned that my ascension to 4 stars was unusual. I guess you could say that in the sense that my primary background, or my career area, if you will, was financial management. And they generally don't promote financial managers to 4 stars. So obviously I had to get out and do a few other things. But it was a bit unusual. I was born and raised in D.C. I joined the Air Force with not one semester hour of college. And barely finished high school. So I had to come in and get my degree at night and all of that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about that when we go into Q&A. But you need to understand, one, what kind of organization you all are going to be a part of. Because it's an organization that if you're willing to work hard, and I know you hear this, and I know you heard this from your parents, it's absolutely true. If you have the potential, you're willing to work hard, you can go as high as you want. It's really up to you. So, my first lesson that really helped me in my life is it's okay to try and fail, but it's not okay not to try. Another lesson that I think is important for you all, and it's been really important to me, I learned over in Southeast DC. And again, I'm growing up in the inner city, and you all know about inner cities, sort of tough neighborhoods. And the interesting thing about my upbringing is my father was an Army NCO. He was stationed at Walter Reed. My mother had not completed high school. I think she got through 10th grade. So I was having a tough time in school. And unfortunately, I started to hang out with some folks that, who just wanted to get in trouble. And by the way, you very seldom find folks who want to get in trouble by themselves. They always want to bring somebody along with them. So where I lived in Southeast, there was an old corner store. Now, most of you all are too young to remember a lot of this, so I will try to make sure you stay with me here. Because we came up with a plan to go steal some candy. And I said, yep, sounds good to me. So it was wintertime. We had our coats on. The plan was for, again, think about this. Their plan was for me, all of us to go in together, the two of them to distract the store owner, for me to go steal the candy, stuff it in my pocket, and walk out. Okay, that was the plan. So we go into this store, and think about this now. This is back, this store, most of you have never seen a phone booth. But this store had a row of phone booths. So I walk into the store, and it also had a grill. So my two buddies go up to the grill, they distract the store owner and about ordering something from the grill. I'm stuffing candy in my pockets, not recognizing, number one, that there's these big round mirrors all over the store, and also not recognizing that this store owner had seen this stuff before, so he was suspicious anyway. I didn't know any of that. So I stuff all this stuff in my pocket. They're talking to the store owner. I head for the door. Of course, he heads me off at the door. He said, "What are you doing? I saw you put all that candy in your pocket." So unfortunately, I did with what a lot of young kids do then and now, as I started lying. And so I said, look, I've got money. I just left it at home. And of course, again, my friends yelled out, well, no, you don't have any money at home. So they think this is funny. And I'm scared to death. So the store owner says, look, you can go to jail for stealing. I want you to call your parents and tell them to come up to the store, and I'm not letting you out of here until they come up and get you. Otherwise, I'm calling the police. And again, I'm a kid. I'm scared to death. So the guy said, I said, okay, let me call my parents. So I went into the phone booth. Phone call back then was 10 cents. I didn't have 10 cents. I pretended like I was putting my hand up to the phone booth and putting a dime in. I picked up the phone and moved my lips as though I was talking. I hung up the phone. See, this is how you get the 4 stars. I hung up the phone. I hung up the phone, and I stepped out and said, sir, I'm sorry, my parents aren't home, they're at work. Again, another one of my friends said, you know your mother doesn't work, she's at home. So the store owner looked at me and said, look, I know you didn't put any money in that phone booth because I didn't hear the dime drop down, which I always hear when somebody uses the phone booth. So now I'm caught. And I'm ready to confess and just say, look, I just made a mistake. I'll go put the candy back. And he finally told me, yeah, just put the candy back and leave and don't ever come back. What did I learn from that really helped me throughout my life? Number one, be careful who you hang around with. And I say that in the context of in the military or in industry, it really doesn't matter. In your professional work life, who you hang around with matters. Who you pick as a mentor matters. Who you look at in the military or whatever service, or I see some folks here from all kinds of academies and colleges and Texas A&M and everywhere. Who you pick to follow is important. It is important to have mentors. It is important to look at folks and say, I want to be like that. But just be very, very careful about how you do that. So don't ever stop trying. And even if you fail, keep going. Be careful who you hang around with. Finally, Probably the most impactful thing that happened to me in my career came about in an interesting way. As you know, I was enlisted initially for about 7 years. But I got to tell you, when I came off the streets of D.C., I was pretty rough, I guess, when I first came in the Air Force. So think about this. Now, I don't know how much imagination you all have, but I'm going to ask you to use your imagination now, because you're going to really have to think about this one. But here it is. You ready? When I was 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, I know it's hard to believe now, I had an afro like you could not believe. Now, I wish I could grow one now. I can't, but just take my word for it. And again, this is the mid-'70s, so everybody had long hair. I mean, that was the style. And of course, when you go in the military, you have to cut your hair to a certain length. And I have to tell you again, I was 18 years old, immature. Me and all of my friends and I, we would try to get away with as much hair as we could while we were in the Air Force. And there was a trick to it. We would grow our hair longer than we were supposed to, and we would wear a stocking cap at night and pack it all down. And we would do that every night, and it was just an art to it. And let me give you an idea of, at this point in my career, and I was in the Air Force, of how long my hair was. I joined the Air Force, went to Pope Air Force Base, North Carolina, then went on, and I got married when I was there, went on a 1-year remote tour to Taiwan and worked in the post office. So my hair was already too long when I got to Taiwan. When I got to Taiwan, we had a pretty cool boss. He was a master sergeant. He said, look, I don't care how long you grow your hair, as long as you don't get in any trouble and nobody says anything, I don't care. Wasn't the right thing to say, but that's what he said. So my friends and I made a bet that we would go the entire remote year without getting a haircut. And we won that bet. I went an entire year without a haircut. So I rotated back to the States from Taiwan. Now, those of you probably most of you in the Air Force won't recognize this, but maybe those of you who aren't associated with the Air Force certainly won't. But when I got my assignment, it was to a base. It was actually Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. But more important than that, it was part of a command called Strategic Air Command. And those that are laughing know, Strategic Air Command was a serious command. They had the bombers, they had the ICBMs. It was strict. It was by the book. You did not mess around on a SAC base. They were very strict about dress and appearance, shine shoes, everything. It was you did not step on a SAC base, Strategic Air Command base, without having your act together. And I didn't know anything about this, so when I told my friends I was going to this base, they all laughed at me. I didn't know what they were talking about. So anyway, let's fast forward. I'm at Whiteman Air Force Base, packing my hair down every night. My wife and I remember the movie was called Jaws, when Jaws first came out. We went to the movies Sunday night, got back late, because on the weekends, generally, I know this is hard to believe now, but my wife would braid my hair on the weekends. And so I didn't have time to pack my hair down, so I go into work Monday morning with all of this hair out. If I could, when I think back on it now, I think to myself, they should have kicked me out. I mean, why did I? But there's a point I'm going to make here. Why was I so? I wouldn't say stupid, because again, it was as though everyone was doing it. It wasn't like I was standing out. Pushing the hair length limit was just what everybody did. At least the young folks did. So anyway, I'm sitting in an office with my hair out, and I'm sweating bullets. And a chief master sergeant, which is in the Air Force, the top enlisted grade, E9 for all the other services, walks by the door, looks in, and keeps going. So I'm thinking, man, I got away with that one. And literally a second later, he did a Michael Jackson moonwalk back to that door. And he came in and he said, I can't believe what I'm seeing. He said, get up out of the chair. Get your hat. So I got my hat. I didn't know this guy, but I was a two-striper and he was a chief master sergeant. I did what he told me. So I followed him outside. He told me to come with him and get in his pickup truck. Now, I've learned since, and I don't know how it is in the other services, I don't know why all Chief Master Sergeants or E9s have pickup trucks, but they all do. So he put me in his pickup truck. He took me to the barber shop. He paid the barber. He sat down in a chair right across from my chair, barber chair, and watched me with a big smile on his face get a haircut. Well within regulations, trust me. So I got back in his truck. I'm not mad, I'm more scared than I am mad. And he drives around the base a little bit, takes a long route back to my office. And he started talking to me, and he said, look, I've got kids, I understand about the long hair. He said, I get it. He said, but you're in the United States Air Force now, and they have standards. And if you're going to stay in the United States Air Force, you need to live up to those standards. And he says, it's important that you do so. And he said, by the way, what are you doing with your life? You going to college? What are you doing? He said, I've seen you around here before. I've seen you around the base. I was on the base basketball team. I said, I've seen you. But what are you doing with your life? And I didn't have a good answer. So he brought me back to work. He didn't say anything to my boss. He didn't get me in any trouble. He said, but I want to have lunch with you. I said, yes, sir. So he came back at lunchtime. We went out to lunch. He said, I don't really want to go to lunch with you. I want to take you over to the base education office, and you're going to sign up for some college courses right now. And I did. And that got me on my way to earning my college degree so that I could become commissioned and join the Air Force. Now, here's my message to you. Number one, don't grow your hair like that while you're in uniform. But the bigger lesson is the key, I think, the key to we have the strongest, most feared military in the world. And is the technology of our equipment contribute to that? Absolutely. Do our officers and generals and admirals and all those folks contribute to that? Absolutely. But you know why folks around the world fear our military? It's because of our enlisted force. And because of how dedicated and how professional and how committed they are. And so I learned right then that if I wanted to be successful, especially as an officer, I better go find me an NCO who was really sharp to hang on to and learn from. And I did that at every level of my career, every single level, every single promotion. I went and found me an NCO that I could sit down and talk to help me get through my career. Very, very valuable. By the way, several assignments later, I'm for my second time at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina, and another chief, Master Sergeant, that I'd run into got me into officers training school. So I owe a lot to our enlisted force, but more importantly, regardless of where you are in your careers, I think it's really important to understand that the backbone of our military is our enlisted force, and make sure you understand and embrace that, because I think that's really a strong part of our military. Okay, I want to leave some time for questions. So one more quick story, just again to make a point. So it's football season, so I'll give you a football story. So again, born and raised in Southeast. We ended up moving out to Maryland, Prince George's County when I'm in high school. I walk into and I was, all city this and all city that, and I walk into a brand new high school in Maryland, go out for the football team. My friends and I, we're first year high school students. We made a pact that we wanted to play together on the junior varsity so we could stay together and have fun. So we make the team. The season is about to start. The coach says, okay, varsity offense on the field, JV defense on the field. So we were going to be fodder for the varsity offense to just run over. So I'm playing sort of defensive end is what they called it now. What they called it then on defense. So I don't know because I'm basically introverted. I don't know what possessed me to do this. And I'm a new guy. So I'm standing there waiting to get down in my three-point stance, and the coaches are huddled over here watching the offense. And I said in a loud voice, Coach, I don't know what play they're going to run, but it better not come through here because it's not going to work. And the coach, looked at me with disdain, and he blew his whistle. And he walked into the offensive huddle. And I know what he was doing. He said, I don't know what y'all were running, but I want you to run it right down his throat. So I get down in my three-point stance. I know it's coming. The ball has snapped. I don't know how this all happened. It was happening so fast, but the guy came after me, the offensive tackle and the offensive guard, and I don't know how I slipped through them, but I hit the running back in the backfield, and I mean with emphasis. And again, back then you could hit. I mean seriously hit. And I hit this guy down on the ground. And I got up. I said, Coach, I told you, nobody's coming through here. I don't know what about what I said don't you understand? I mean, and again, the other JV folks were looking at me and said, what is wrong? Because I was the quiet guy. They were looking at me like, what has gotten into this guy? And so the coach, he was mad because here you got a varsity sort of loudmouth showing up it's JV loudmouth showing up his varsity offense. So they ran the play again, and I gave him the same result again. He ran the play a third time, and I gave him the same result the third time. That he was livid. He said, JV, get out of here, go in, take a shower, and he ran the varsity. They ran wind sprints for about an hour. Luckily, I was gone by the time they got in. So I come out to practice the next day. Varsity's mad. They want to get back at me somehow. So the varsity's down one end, the JV's down the other. The coach calls me. He sends word that he wants to talk to me. And this is an old Vince Lombardi coach, so this is a guy that doesn't take any guff off of anybody. And so I figured he's just going to chew me out, and I was going to be running laps for the rest of the day. And so I went down to the coach. I said, yes, sir. I was ready to take my butt chewing. And he said, hey, good job yesterday. Get over there with the varsity. I said, Coach, I prefer to play with my friends in the JV. Get over there with the varsity. And so I went over with the varsity, ended up starting on the varsity, both offense and defense, for the rest of my time there at the high school. But here's the point, and I say this because this is something I struggle with a little bit. When you get in the workplace, and this is not unique to the military, but I certainly found it in the military. We've all got different personalities. Some of us are extroverts, some of us are introverts, and some of us are everything in between. We've all got different personalities. And I'm never going to tell you to be a spring butt or be someone who always wants to jump up and have the boss looking at him. But I am going to suggest to you and recommend to you that when you get on the job, you bring your A game. You put on your game face and you get in there and get the job done. Because whether it's and I've worked obviously in the military, I've run a nonprofit, and I've worked in industry as well. It's all the same. The bosses are looking for folks who are coming to work with their game face on and ready to get things done. And it doesn't matter what kind of personality you have. If you got the talent, you have to go there, go to work, make it happen, go in every day, fired up, ready to go to work. You're doing the most important job in this country, and that's protecting the country. You should charge into work, ready to do that every day. Okay, before I open it up for questions, and I hope you have some questions. And by the way, I'm retired from the military now, so I'll give you a flat-out honest answer. So just ask me anything. I do want to mention one thing, though, because it's sort of, I'm sure the folks sitting here would tell you the same thing. It's really inspiring to see you all here and how young you are, how most of you have a long life and a long career in front of you. And I'm clearly not going to, last thing I'm going to talk about up here is politics. But I will say this, and I don't care if you have a D, an R, or an I next to your name. That doesn't matter. I think most of you would agree that our country right now is terribly divided, terribly polarized. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming one side or the other. It is what it is. The only reason I mention that to you is you all serve as an example of just the opposite. I was the Vice Chief of Staff for the Air Force for 3 years. General Mark Welsh was the chief of staff right next to me. I saw General Welsh every day. I was in his office every day, and if he was traveling, we talked on the phone or we emailed every day. I was in his house for dinner, he was in my house for dinner. We worked together every day for 3 years. If you would ask me what his politics are, what party he belongs to, I have no idea. It never came up. I was never interested. He was never interested. We had a mission to do. We were focused on our mission. We had something in common that was above that of politics. We were airmen. We were military folks, leaders in the military, of the strongest military in the world. That's what we were focused on. And the only reason I'm selling that to you is you serve as the example for what the rest of the country should be like. You know, if I pick two folks out in the audience and one is a Democrat and one was a Republican, I guarantee you the two of them could have a reasonable conversation. Even though they may disagree on issues, they could have a reasonable conversation and come away still friends like they were beginning. Unfortunately, you don't see much of that in our country anymore. So recognize that when you walk through the airport and folks say, thank you for your service, and folks admire you, and they say you really look sharp in your uniform, they aren't saying that because they have to or because they want to be nice. They're saying that because of the respect and the admiration they have for you, because you are focused on their defense, and that's it. You don't worry about all the other stuff, and you serve as an example for them and their kids and the rest of the country. So thanks a lot. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you all having me here. And again, congratulations to all of you. You all have a great future in front of you, and I wish you all the best. So I think there is some mics, they said, in the aisle. And so if anybody's got a question, somebody needs to ask a question, otherwise I'm going to sit up here and bash the Cowboys. Which maybe some of you would prefer anyway. Yeah, here are the two mics. Yes, sir.
As you were coming up the ranks as an officer and when you were enlisted as well, did you find yourself ever having to work harder than your counterparts?
Wow, that's a good question. In my view, the answer is yes. There's a lot of reasons for that. And I guess I took the lead from my father, who it's hard for me to even imagine what he went through. My father joined the Army before it was integrated. And even after it was integrated, I mean, he went through a lot. And I won't tell you about my father's story because we don't have the time, but very quickly, he was in the Korean War, was in an accident, lost his left hand, had to be amputated. They sent him back to Walter Reed. And those of you who are familiar with Walter Reed, the old Walter Reed, there's a compound next to it called Forest Glen. And Forest Glen was there because they wouldn't allow the African-American soldiers to stay in the hospital overnight. They all had to go stay at Forest Glen. So I can't imagine what he went through. I just can't imagine. But one of the things he told me was, I can't guarantee you that the playing field will always be level. I can't guarantee you that you will be the smartest one in the room. But he said one thing he can guarantee himself, and I can guarantee myself, is I can be the hardest working one. And I just embrace that. You can say, well, that's not fair. Okay, life's not fair, which is what he used to tell me. But yeah, I think the answer to your question is yes. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
So there's a two-part question. First of all, what high school was it in Prince George's County?
Central,
Central.
right off of Central Avenue.
The second question, sir, is you mentioned that to get promoted to 4 stars, you said you had to kind of diversify your profile as financial officer.
A little, not much, but a little, yeah.
How hard was it to step into unfamiliar waters and what you're known for?
Yeah, good question. It wasn't difficult for me. One of the things you'll find, particularly as you go up in rank, is you will get jobs that you have not a lot of technical knowledge behind, but you've got something more important. You've got leadership. And so, yeah, I was in financial management. I ran a depot. I was on the Jade on joint staff. You walk into these jobs with not a lot of technical background, but you have to be very inquisitive. You have to be very focused, and you have to really. It's all about leadership and knowing the right questions to ask, knowing how to ask questions, knowing when somebody's BSing you or not. So no, it wasn't that difficult. I actually enjoy it. I like new things. I like learning new things. But I found, at least in my, and it is, by the way, no different in industry. It's all about leadership. If you walk in and you capture those folks, they're ready to follow you, it'll work. Yes, sir, there was a question. Yes, sir.
So, as you're time in the Air Force, what's one thing
I think you're going to need a mic.
Oh, you can use your command voice.
Stand up, speak up, because it's being recorded.
as one thing when you were in the Air Force, what's one thing that you didn't see enough of in officers or enlisted?
Oh, great question. So the question is, both officer and enlisted, what did I not see enough of? Let me take officer first, because that's the easiest one. Because it's sort of I have a little bit of a pet peeve with the way sometimes officers are trained, and that's why I talked about our enlisted force, because sometimes if you're trained as a supervisor, if you're not careful, you'll get the impression that my job is to sit here and my subjects out there do all the work. And I'm just sitting up here on the high horse. And I don't really, back to your point, I don't really need to understand the technicalities of what goes on there. I'm just up here. And if somebody screws up down here, I'll just go down there and fire them. It's not my fault because I don't know all that technical stuff. So one of the things I wish I would like to see more of is having an officer training, understanding accountability, and understanding that you can't just supervise people. You have to understand and learn over time what it is that they're doing. I'll give you an example. As one of my jobs, it was a wing or base comptroller, so the financial manager for the base. And of course, I had folks in finance and budget and doing all kinds of stuff under me. And I couldn't fill out a travel voucher if you paid me. So I didn't know how to fill out a travel voucher, but I knew enough to. One of the things I used most often was leadership by walking around. So I walked around every day talking to people. How you doing? What are you doing? How can I help you? And I would actually go up to the counter and watch them process travel vouchers. The point is, I wanted to get engrossed in that mission enough so I knew what was going on, although I didn't know the technicality. So that's one. For NCOs or for enlisted, what I would like to have seen more of, I think, is more opportunities younger. I remember when I was an airman, I would answer the phone, hey, this is Airman Spencer, and you could kind of hear the hesitation on the other line, like, was there somebody else there that knows something? It's kind of like answering the phone as a second lieutenant. This is Lieutenant so-and-so, well, isn't there a major or lieutenant colonel or something around? But they had no idea how much knowledge was there. There's a lot of knowledge there, and today, young folks are so much smarter and advanced than they were years ago that you all come in the military, you all have a lot of knowledge, and you all have, you know a lot, and you have a lot of ideas, and you're innovative, and you think outside the box. And so I think from an enlisted perspective, I would like to see sort of more exposure earlier. As an officer, one of the things that shocked me in the Air Force was, the Air Force has a DV fleet. I know he's giving me the hook here. The Air Force has a DV fleet where they have a fleet of airplanes that they fly people around rather than just cargo. And the first time I got on one of those to fly somewhere across the country, the co-pilot was a second lieutenant and the pilot was a first lieutenant. And that did not give me a lot of comfort. But the point is they got a lot of responsibility early. And my point is I think our enlisted folks can handle a lot more responsibility earlier as well. Okay, hey Rob, how you doing? So again, they give me the hook here. Thank you very much for your time, and more importantly, thank you for what you're doing for our country. Our country needs you. We all need you. So go out there and do all of your organizations proud. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.